Today, I'm going to move on to another topic. And although we're going to be applying these notions of different types of realism to different aspects of objects and persons. So I want to ask you guys. So here I have a picture, I have two pictures. So can you guys tell me what's the difference between what you see in these two pictures? Can somebody, oops, no, this here. So what's the difference? Rock? Well, on which side is there a rock? On the right side. Wait a minute. Is the right side really a rock? The left one is original, it seems. So what is there on the right side? Front side view. All right. So bone, debris. All right. So let me explain what we see here. So on the left is basically cutting tool. Yes. So on the right, it's an arrowhead. Okay. So these are some of the earliest tools that have ever been used by human beings, which have been found by paleontologists. And so they are carved stone. So one of you said rock. They're rock that has been carved in order to make an arrow, okay, or to attach at the tip of an arrow or a spear for hunting, okay? So that's what we see on the right. So these are the very first tools that have ever been made by the earliest hominids, the earliest human beings. Now on the left is simply, you know, earth, right? It's, what did some of you say here? It's basically the ground, okay? It's the ground. If you're like walking around and you look down and you see the ground, okay? So the difference, I asked, what's the difference between the left-hand picture and the right-hand picture? Is that basically these early humans, you know, they were walking around and they're walking on the ground. And if you can see on that ground on the left, it's kind of undifferentiated. It's just kind of vague. It's not really clear what it is. But then at one point they saw something, and then they pulled out of that ground, they pulled out a rock that they saw, that they said, hey, I can make an arrowhead out of this. So they pulled it out, they separated it from the ground, and then they started chopping it and carving it and to make it sharper and sharper so that they could use it. So they went to the ground and they pulled it out, and then they started turning it around their hand, looking at it here and there. What can I do with it? How heavy is it? How sharp is it? Where can I carve it? Okay, and now I carve it and I carve it and I turn it to something, and now I can attach it to a stick, right, to a pole, and then I can use it as an arrow. So basically what happened was they turned it into an object, okay? So the arrowhead on the right is an object. So an object is, in a sense, is different from the thing that you can see on the left, undifferentiated kind of stuff that you can see on the left. And then we have human beings. They turn a thing into an object, which can be manipulated by us, which can be turned around. It can be picked apart. We can talk about it. We can measure it. We can assess it. We can evaluate it, and we use it for our purpose, okay? So this is an object. This is a very important concept here, okay? So this is an object. Now, all right. So here we have in this slide, we have two actions of hitting. So on the right, we have, right, smashing an iPhone. On the left, we have this, you know, this boy who's hitting his friend. So there's an action of hitting that's going on in both cases. But what's the difference between the hitting here? Can somebody tell me? What's the difference between the hitting here? How would you rather be hit? There's the hitting power. Okay, there is that. There is that difference. There is maybe there's a slightly there's a difference in power or force. One is a literal smashing while the other is a symbolic one. Oh, that's interesting. Okay. All right. I wasn't going to take it in that direction, but that's pretty interesting. One is to show affection and one is to say bye. Aha, there's a different purpose. Okay. Right. There's a different purpose to the hitting. Well, tell me, what's the difference between the relationship? So the relationship, let's say I'm hitting the phone on the right there. What's my relationship with that phone compared to my relationship with the guy that I'm hitting, if I'm the guy who's doing the hitting on the left? What's the difference between the relationships in both cases? Ah, right, my property versus another living being. Exactly. So basically, the iPhone on the right is an object. So I talked earlier, I talked about an object. So the iPhone is an object. I can own it. And basically, I can use it for whatever I want. And I can smash it. I can do whatever I want with it because it's an object. But my friend is a person, right? Yes, he's a living being, but I'm going to say there's actually a difference between a living being and a person. He's a living being, but more importantly, he's a person. Yes, I, you versus I, it. Exactly. Very good. So with the phone, I'm doing I, it, and I can smash my phone and that's not a problem. But with my friend, I can tease him, I can hit him a little to show my friendship because it's I, you. So my friend is a person. My friend is a person. My phone is an object. Have a look at this. Just take a few seconds to look at these images and read what is on it. And you tell me. The slaves, are they persons or are they objects? Persons regarded as objects. Objects for sale. Objects to the buyer. Depends on how you perceive. Aha, biologically person. Wait a minute. All right, we're getting at something. We're getting at something. We're getting to where I'm getting, but not quite exactly. Right. So they're treating it as machines, relationally objects. Very good. Workers. Workers. So are these people persons or are they objects? So in both pictures, we have employees, right? We have workers. Are they persons or are they objects? Persons. Persons. Objects when they're at work and persons when they're not at work. Can you explain that a little bit? It depends on who you're asking. Okay, very, very good. So first, let me ask both of you. Jerry, what do you mean when you say they're objects when they're at persons, when objects when they're at work and persons when they're not at work?
I think that because when I'm employing a person, I'm buying his or her time, and he or she is working for me. And I think that it's like getting a machine when I'm employing someone and I use their time to help me do some productive things.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that many employees treat them as objects when they're at work. And for example, when we do some calculations, and to calculate the productivity, we just treat them as like machines. For example, he or she is producing 10 clothes an hour or something like that.
Very good. Yes, exactly. But what about, you were saying persons when they're not at work?
Oh, I mean when they're at home, they're off work already. So they can do whatever they want in their free time. So I will treat them as persons as they're free will and can do whatever they want.
Okay. So Oceana, what did you mean when you said depends on who you're asking?
What I meant was that if you're asking from a company's perspective, for example, on the photo on the left, what the company generally cares about is them getting their task done. So to a company perspective on productivity, they may just be regarded as objects that gets the company's work done. But from an employee's perspective or from a co-worker's perspective, you see each other as people who are just trying to earn some money and like work together. You kind of have a interpersonal relationship with them. So if you're asking from one employee to another employee, they may treat each other as another person instead of an object.
Right, right. So the picture on the right here, it really expresses that idea that so the workers from the company's perspective, they really are objects. And as Jerry said, you know, they're objects being used for the instrumental purpose of producing and making so much money and so on. But among themselves, actually, often the workers among themselves, they're having a great time together. Or they might not be having a great time with their job. Maybe yes, maybe no, but certainly they might really be enjoying the friendships that they're building at work and the camaraderie of their relationships amongst each other. So let me see here. So can there be blending between being a person and being an object? Aha, right. I think all employees are being seen as persons and objects at the same time. So Jacqueline, you made an important point that persons, so there's something about respect that a person is somehow inherent to personhood is the requirement to respect the person. Somehow that is part of the meaning of person, of a personhood needs to be respected. But an object is, respect is not part of the meaning or of the definition of an object. An object is there to be used. So a person needs to be respected. An object exists to be used for an instrumental purpose. Very good. Okay, so now, here we have, okay, let's say we have a man, and here we have two ways of knowing this man. What are the two ways of knowing the man? So the picture on the left and the picture on the right actually illustrate two different ways of knowing this man. What are the two ways of knowing the man? By DNA data or personally? So how do you, okay, so yeah, I mean, the image on the left is not DNA data, it's a blood test, okay? So basically one way to know the person is to, right, data analytics, okay. One way to know the person, right, statistically, so one way to know the person is, you know, go to the doctor, and the doctor is going to measure you in all different ways, right? You're going to do your blood test, your MRI, okay, DNA analysis, everything you want, and then you get all this, you get all these charts and all these figures about this person. But then the other way of getting to know this person is to, as some of you said, emotionally. Inner characteristics, right, is to actually, so here we have the picture of the person, but I guess what I'm trying to convey here is actually to go and talk to the person, right? To go and, right, to see the person and talk to this person, to listen to this person. So which way do you think you will know the person better? So which is the best way to know this, to know him? By data analysis? Through talking. All right. So by his face, talking with the person's a better way. So we had two different answers here. One is through data analysis and the other was talking. So why? Let's hear a bit of a debate then. Why is data analysis a better way to know this man? Yeah.
Sorry. I actually thought that if you talk to the person, they can lie and deceive and actually gave you a wrong answer. But if you look at a person, even by their hands, if they have something on them, for example, if they have ink on them, it may show them they're careless, but they write. So this is actually a better evidence into knowing people. That's just what I think.
So you can basically you're saying that what they say can be misleading. So the data, even if it's like data like ink on their finger, so you don't want to listen to what they say. You just want observable data, whether it's statistics or traces on their body. That's how you're going to know about this person. Yeah. So a lot of you said talking. So somebody who talked about talking, interacting, you know, talking, interacting. Why is that a better way to know this man? Can somebody explain? So who can say? We got several people. So how about Lee King Kung? Can you explain a little bit? I mean, why would the talking be better than the data? Or how about Jerry?
I actually think that talking is better because I think that even if they try to lie to me and they're going to lie for their whole lives, I don't care because it's them already. If that person is going to lie to everyone and his actions are going to be like that, like what he or she said, I think it makes him or her that person already, the person that he or she said or told me. Although it may not be the real person, the real him or her, but it's okay for me to know him enough.
So actually, when the person lies, you learn that this person is a liar. So that's also learning about this person.
Yeah, yes.
Mm.
And also, if he or she just do all his actions and speak and lie to everyone, and it is consistent, I don't think he or she is lying anymore.
Right. Okay. Right. Right. All right. Very interesting. Well, I mean, come on, you guys. I mean, everybody, when you're making friends with people, you're not looking at their data, right? You're talking to them. So when you're basically starting a relationship with them as a person, you're not doing data. Now, the data is actually treating this man as an object. Okay. So you're objectifying the person to obtain the data. Now, if you want to be my friend and you don't talk to me, you only go and look up, you ask for a data request at the health center to find my health data. And then you go to the bank to find my credit data. And then you go, you go to the property registry to find my property data. And you go to the civil affairs office to find my birth data. So if you were to collect all the data about me, but you never come to talk about me, I don't think you're ever going to be my friend, right? You won't have a relationship with me, and you haven't treated me as a person. So we can get knowledge from a human being as an object or as a person. But as some of you said, it depends what you're doing, right? So for a doctor to diagnose a disease, you want the blood test. Okay. So once again, as an individual, for a human being, there are two different ways of knowing a human. One is to know them as an object. So one is to objectify them, to know them as an object for a specific purpose. So here the purpose, a very clear purpose, is to, let's say, to know about the condition of their blood, right? So for that specific purpose, we will objectify the person in order to obtain data on their blood. But then we can also know a human being by treating them as a person. And to treat them as a person, we actually talk to them, and we talk to them not just once. We talk, the more we treat them as a person, the more we become a friend with them, the more we have a relationship with them, right? We might get angry with them. We just get involved with this person. And through this involvement with the person, right, through being lied to, through being, having fights, through becoming friends, through hugging, through all of these different things, we actually develop a relationship, a personal relationship. And that relationship is a relationship with a unique quality, which in a sense, exemplifies the personhood of that human being as well as mine. Okay. All right. So so treating people as persons and treating people as objects are two different ways that we can deal with human beings. And as human beings, we have a natural tendency. It seems that within us, we have the tendency to treat each other as human beings. To treat each other as persons. Now, the image to the right shows soldiers being trained to, this is during World War I, soldiers being trained to send the bayonet to stab people to death at the battlefield. And actually, soldiers are not able to kill because we just would rather not kill people. So you actually have to train soldiers to depersonalize the enemy and to objectify them, to turn them into objects. And once you've turned them into objects, so once you've mentally turned them into objects, then you can kill them. And this is what armies do. They literally train people to depersonalize and to objectify the enemy in order that you would then be willing to kill them, because we will not be willing to kill a person. So what about animals? Are animals persons or are they objects? Like dogs. Are dogs persons or are they objects? Persons because they have a life. Persons. Depends how you treat it. Cynthia, can you explain?
For me, because I have a cat, if I
Yeah,
going to live with him and I treat it as a person to like be my friend, so I will say the cat is person, and if like the human they may eat animals like pig or chicken, so I think it will become an object.
right, right. So animals, so somebody said, I would say it's somewhere between person and object, somewhere higher than objects, but lower than persons. So could be a blend of both because we can build a relationship with the animal and use them. All right. So we have a continuum between pure personhood and pure objecthood, we could say, right? So we could purely treat the animal as a friend, as somebody who I really treat as a person with love. I get to know them. I can communicate with the dog. The dog really understands my expressions. He understands what I said. The dog or the cat, you know, can understand me. We can feel that communication. We feel that bonding, everything like that. So we're treating the animal as a person. But we could also treat it as a pure object, and it could be in between. So here we have vivisection. The slides here show vivisection. So actually a lot of the original scientific research that led to the discoveries of the circulation of the blood was acquired by cutting open live dogs, okay? So taking dogs who are alive and cutting them open to see what's going on with the blood and the heart, to see the heart pumping with your own eyes and everything like that. So this requires completely depersonalizing the dog to turn it into a complete, purely an object, right? And it also, to a certain degree, it also requires you to objectify yourself. So you need to learn, well, now these kind of experiments are illegal, but at the time, the scientists had to learn to suppress their emotions. If you're cutting an animal, cutting the dog open and it's crying and everything like that, and you could see it's the pain in its eyes and everything like that, any human being would also feel, their heart will feel some sympathy, will feel some pain for that dog. So scientists had to learn to suppress their emotions and in a sense to turn themselves into a machine in order to objectify the dog and to turn it into an object for the purpose of the scientific research. Okay, so what about a human embryo? Object or person? Becoming a person. Becoming a person. Any other ideas? Depends on when you think life starts. So, person after formation of the brain. Any other ideas? maybe depends on stage, undeveloped persons. All right. So what we can see here is actually different views on when the embryo becomes a person. So, you know, the embryo is always human, right? Right from the beginning, it's human. Right from, you know, from the moment that there are a few cells, it's a human embryo, and it's actually alive. These are living cells. But we have a lot of different views as to when, you know, when does this embryo acquire personhood? So is it when life starts? Is it when the brain is formed? Is it when there's self-consciousness? And so on. So there are many different views on this. And this is obviously an important issue because and so that's why there's a lot of controversies, for example, on abortion, because depending on when we consider the embryo to be a person, then before that, you can turn the embryo into an object so that you could abort, right? You could abort it, you could use it for scientific experiment, and so on and so forth. So the embryo it can be an object or a person depending on when you define the time when it has acquired personhood. So here we get to the issue of different understandings of realism. So we can have a realist view of humanity and an anti-realist view of personhood. So what does this mean? It means that the embryo is human regardless of what we think. Regardless of what I think, it's human, right? But the personhood of the embryo is something that's social. In other words, this is not independent of our minds. Society decides when it becomes a person. So there are some societies which decide that the embryo becomes a person right at the moment of conception. And so abortion is completely illegal. There are other societies which consider that the embryo becomes a person after X number of weeks. And so all of this is decided by society. So this is an anti-realist view of personhood. So this is one way of looking at the issue. Now then there's another way of looking at the issue of personhood, though, is that actually the developing infant is becoming a person independently of how it is defined or treated by society. Similarly, if we take an anti-realist position, we could say, if we look at the issue of the slave, early on we looked at the slave. So a slave is not, society did not confer personhood onto the slave. Society made the slave into an object. And so any member of that society, if they were following the norms and morality of that society, if they treated the slave as an object, they were acting totally normally and morally, because that was the moral norm of that society. So society decided that this slave was an object. So this is an anti-realist position. Personhood is entirely dependent on what people decide how to treat a human being, as a person or as an object. But then there's another view, which is a realist view of personhood, which is to say that any human being is a person, no matter how it is treated. Independently of how society treats a human being, all human beings must be treated as persons. Now, this is very interesting. Cadaver. Cadaver is a dead body. So is a dead body an object or a person? Object. Why? Why is a dead body an object? Depends on how much respect you have for the cadaver. Li King Kung, you said no soul. You have the question. So what does your question imply? If you say no soul, are you saying that it is an object because it has no soul? Or what are you saying when you asked about no soul? It's not living, it's not thinking. Object. It's an object. Okay, so what's very interesting here, so again, we have many different views about this, about a dead body. Now, it's interesting if you look up dead body or cadaver in Wikipedia, and so here I edited, or I just made some extracts from Wikipedia. All of the definition, the entire definition of cadaver, a human body, is entirely as an object. So it's a dead body that's used by medical students, physicians, and other scientists to study anatomy, identify disease sites, determine causes of death, provide tissue to repair, blah, et cetera, et cetera. So all of these are really treating the cadaver as an object, really something that can be used for a purpose. And then if we look at the table of contents of the Wikipedia, we have, you know, how the cadaver is useful in medical science, how it's useful in dissection, body snatching, you know, so how people snatch bodies, selling, how bodies can be used as objects for sale, how you can use bodies for making cars safer, and so on and so forth. So all of these definitions of the body are entirely looking at the body as an object. But actually most people, that's not the way they treat a cadaver, actually. I don't think any of you will be happy if after you die, you are instantly thrown into the garbage as an object. So all societies and cultures have a very ambiguous relationship to the dead body. Okay. For instance, medical students at HKU will have a moment of silence before using the cadavers at the anatomy lab. They're treating the cadavers as persons with significant level of respect. Yes, right. So when we, after a person dies, there's a whole process of treating the body with respect, embalming the body, the whole funeral, the burial or cremation, all of this process is actually a process during which the body is still, to a certain degree, being treated as a person and not as an object. So here we have a case where a dead body is treated as a person, and it's considered quite inappropriate and quite wrong to treat the body as an object. So so actually there's a contradiction there when when medical researchers actually treat the body as an object. And so as you mentioned, now there are practices that exist in order to, in a sense, continue to treat the body as a person to a certain degree. And there's a very interesting example of this, which is Tzu Chi University in Taiwan. Which started this practice called silent mentor, where actually while you are still alive, you are asked to donate your body to medical research. And then after you die, the medical researchers will first go and visit your family. They will listen to the family members to tell them more about the person whose body this is. And then they will show respect and gratitude. They will thank this person for the contributions that they're making to science and so on. And so the body is, in a sense, is treated as a person even into the process of medical research. And so the objectification of the body is not total. So this is another case which kind of illustrates the sometimes ambiguous boundaries between if a human being or human body is an object or a person. So personhood is not exactly the same thing as being a live human being. A live human being, for example, in the case of a slave, in some societies, is treated as an object. A dead human being is treated as a person. Okay, so now I'm going to move on to some of the implications of this, going a little bit further, looking at non-human persons. So we already talked about animals, okay? So if I adopt a little piglet, that little piglet, my pet piglet, I'm going to treat it as a person. But when and it's interesting, we even have a different word for pork, right? So the same animal, if we treat it as a person, it becomes like a pet piglet. But actually, if we treat it as an object, it turns into pork, right? So the animal can be a person or an object. Now, so pets. So you mentioned earlier that you treat your cat as a person. We treat pets as persons. We treat animals as persons. And when we treat pets as persons, we tend to, so that means we treat them with a certain amount of respect. We consider that they shouldn't be objectified. And somehow we're communicating, right? Somehow we're communicating with the person that we have a relationship with this person. We read signs in the eyes of the cat, right? We read signs in the bark of the dog or the whining of the dog, right? We read signs in the wagging of the tail, right? And they read signs in what we communicate to them. So we communicate with persons. We communicate with persons. So we have a tendency, and this is something that's been noticed by psychologists, and it's also something that we could say that we could see in the history of humanity, the history of religions, is that human beings actually have a tendency to treat everything as persons, or to treat many, many things as persons, not just human beings. So children, and this is called promiscuous anthropomorphism. So children have a tendency to treat all kinds of different things as persons. And so that's why they love fairy tales and they love animals, where, animal stories, where all the animals are really like, are really act and are just like persons, and you can really bond and communicate with them as persons. Now in tribal societies around the world, and not just tribal societies, tribal and traditional societies around the world, animals are treated as persons, and not just pets. So all kinds of animals are treated as persons, and not just animals, but also trees, rocks, mountains, and so on. So all of these different things are treated as persons. So our modern education has to try very hard to stop us from treating all these non-humans as persons. So in our society, it's expected that we only treat human beings as persons, and non-humans shouldn't be treated as persons, with the exception perhaps of pets. Okay, so you can treat non-humans, you can treat your pet as a person, but other than that, non-humans will not be treated as persons, and non-humans, it's okay to treat non-humans as objects. Now, if we talk about, we think about how, let's say the Indians in the Amazon, and they saw a jaguar, and they consider that the jaguar is a person. They look into their eyes and they try to understand what the jaguar is thinking, and they consider that the jaguar is trying to tell them something, right? We have even in Hong Kong, we have actually in traditional Chinese society, we treat the earth as person. We have Tu Di Gong, right? So we have the earth has a spirit. So the earth is personified. There are people who burn incense at the bottom of trees. So the tree is being personified. People are kind of establishing a relationship with the tree. So when we think about this, we might say, well, that's, that's very cute, isn't it? But of course, we all know that these trees and these animals, they aren't persons. There's no evidence for them being persons. Or is there? So what's the evidence that humans are persons? So how can we know if something is actually a person? I guess that's the question I want to ask you guys. Whether a human or an animal, anything. What's the evidence that it's a person? DNA sequence? How can a DNA sequence tell me if, say if something's a person? Ability to touch the thumb with the index finger? What do you mean by that? Ability to have emotions. Certain area of brain response when given stimuli. Animals have emotions too? Able to give reactions, to have a mind unique in terms of characteristic. The highest level of intelligence compared to other living things. Soulishness. Okay. Rationality. Interesting. So I'm going to suggest that there's that personhood. Personhood only exists in the context of a relationship. So one of you said the ability to give reactions. Okay. So there is the only way that I can know if you are a person is through a relationship with you, through engaging in a relationship with you. And through engaging in the relationship with you, there are certain responses or certain signs that come from you that allow me to read or to interpret what you're thinking or what you're trying to communicate. And I do the same. And so we can have a relationship with each other. So there is no evidence of personhood outside of a personal relationship. All of these other things, some of you have said like intelligence. Well, an object, how can I say? Right, you mentioned a computer, whatever, an object can have intelligence, DNA, all of these different measurable characteristics, such as brain response, wave response, stimuli, and DNA sequence and things like that. These are things that this is information you can gain by treating my body as an object, but you cannot access my personhood through taking data about my body, okay? Now, let's just think about this a little bit more. So we have a mountain here. A mountain at the boundary between Qinghai and Tibet in China. And this is a very big mountain, which is called Amnimachen. And the local people, they call this mountain Grandfather Pomra. So this is a person for the local Tibetans. This mountain is a person. The mountain is Grandfather Pomra. They have a relationship with this mountain. They have a personal relationship with this mountain. And you might think, well, wait a minute. How is it possible to have a relationship? How is it possible to treat a mountain as a person? Well, this person is often communicating all kinds of things, right? Sometimes there are storms that come from the mountain. Sometimes it gets cold. Sometimes the weather changes very fast. This mountain provides all kinds of water. It provides river. It provides spaces for forests to grow. It provides spaces for animals that you could hunt. So for the local people, they treat this mountain as a person, a person who provides for their life, and who also can communicate to them, has all kinds of moods, has a personality, has a character. And as you can see with the flags in this picture here, this is a person that they also try to communicate with. So they give offerings, they give prayers and so on to this person. So for the Tibetans, this mountain is a person. Now we also have, let's give another example of this mountain in Java. So Bromo volcano. We can treat the volcano as an object. And so we come in, the seismologist comes in with a seismograph and comes up with the graph that you can see on the right. Local people living at the bottom of the mountain, well, they don't have a seismograph, but they treat the volcano as a person. They listen to the rumbling of the volcano. They observe the clouds, the spuming, the fumes that are coming out of the volcano. They're very closely attuned to what is going on in this volcano. They try to know what is the mood of the volcano. They try to predict how the volcano is going to act in the future. They try to see how they could act in a way to make the volcano happy. So they treat this volcano as a person. Indians in the Amazon treat so many different beings, so many different trees and animals, all kinds of different things as persons in the forest. Modern people treat the forest as an object. Because it's an object, it can be used to extract resources and to make money. So you can chop it all down, as you can see on the right. When you're treating the the different creatures of the forest as persons, you have a certain level of respect. You have to respect them, right? You have to treat them well. So you'll be treating the forest quite differently. So we're running out of time, but I just want to finish with by showing you 2 video clips. Because you might just be wondering, how is it possible that the Indians of the Amazon could treat the animals and plants in the forest as persons, or even treat the whole forest as a person? How could we listen to communications from all these different persons? How could we read some signs? How could we understand something from all these different persons? For the Indians of the Amazon, they consider that all of these creatures are actually communicating to them, telling something to them. We think that that's not possible. We think that only humans can communicate, that only humans can communicate meaningful things to other humans and not animals. So I'm going to play, I'm just going to end and let you think about it. I'm going to play 2 little video clips. The first video clip is about sounds being made by human beings. And because it's human beings that are making the sound, we assume that these humans are saying something meaningful, right? They're making sounds, so we assume that there is something meaningful that they're communicating with their sounds. If we hear sounds coming from the forest, as modern people, we assume that those sounds might be beautiful, but we assume that they are not meaningful. We assume that they're not communicating anything to us. That's how we think as modern people, that only humans can communicate something meaningful. So let's just watch this video and then we'll end at that and we can think about it. About the possibility or the potential possibility of communicating something meaningful.